it's, you know, a different way of looking at it is instead of going to 50%, so that's pretty easy. And then at that point, we just pause for it.
Is that all on the same side of the street? Y'all need something on the side of the street? Oh, yeah. That's on the other side. That sounds good. Yeah, wherever families land. I feel like home stores are acceptable.
Absolutely.
Piece of the just those were like 10,000 acres. Supposed to be the original ranch house. The thing, the original one.
Okay, it's go time. All right, I'm showing 5:30, so we'll go ahead and convene the Wednesday, June 12th Planning Commission meeting. Ms. Ruth, would you like to call a roll? Oh, sorry, you're on the phone.
Sorry. Yes. Chairman Miller,
Here?
Vice Chairman York,
Here.
Commissioner Mandel,
Here.
Commissioner Salazar Garza is absent, Commissioner Munoz,
Here.
Commissioner Matagi,
Here.
Commissioner Lerma,
Here.
Commissioner Hedrick is absent, Commissioner Budd.
Here.
We have a quorum to conduct the meeting.
All right, thank you. Moving on to public comment. Would you please read the rules of decorum?
Thank you, Chairman. Citizens will be allowed to attend and make public comments in person at City Planning Commission meetings. The public is invited to speak on any agenda item and any other items that pertain to the Planning Commission. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. If you choose to speak during this period, you will not be allowed to speak again when the specific item is being considered in order of the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Is anybody in the audience, would anybody like to speak on any items not specific to any agenda item tonight? I see none, so I'll go ahead and close the public comment and move on to the approval of absences.
I move that we approve the absences of Commissioner Watagi for May 29th.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to the approval of the minutes.
Commissioner Mandel, I move that we approve the minutes from May 29th, 2024.
I'll second that.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to consent public hearing, possible action, items A, B, and C.
Good evening, Commissioners. Mark Orozco with Development Services, Planner 3. I'm going to be reading into record consent items A, B, and C. Starting off with consent item A, plats. Item number 2, Oak Terrace Unit 2, Block 1, Lot 9B. It's a final plat of 2.087 acres. It's located south of SPID and east of Flower Bluff Drive. Number 3, Laguna Vista Shores, Block 12, Lot 7A, and Block 13, Lot 5R. It's a replat of 0.44 acres, and the second one is 0.17 acres, respectively. It's located north of Yorktown Boulevard and east of Laguna Vista Shores Road. Item number 4 is Glen Oak Park Unit 2. It's a replat of 1.36 acres, located north of Glen Oak Drive and west of Waldron Road. The plats are meeting the TRC review comments and the Texas Local Government Code. Staff does recommend approval for all plat items. Moving on to consent item B, time extensions. We have Flamingo Resort Bungalows. It's a PUD. It's a replat of 1.03 acres. This is the first request for a 12-month time extension. Item number 6, time extensions. Ocean Brief Subdivision. It's a final plat of 12.35 acres. This is the second request for 12-month time extensions. Staff is recommending approval on both time extensions. Consent item C, zoning. This is a rezoning for Azali Investments LLC. This is a rezoning for property at or near 7702 Starry Road from the FR Farm Rural District to the RM2 Multifamily District. Staff is recommending approval of consent item 7, rezoning. At this time, staff can answer questions for consent items A, B, and C.
Commissioners, questions for staff on items 2 through 7? I see none. With that, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing on, or public comment for anybody wishing to speak on items 2 through 7. I see none, so I'll close the public comment and entertain a motion, or if anybody has any questions for staff.
I'll make a motion, we approve items 2 through 7 as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Commissioner York will be abstaining from item number 8. We will come get you when we move on to fund item number 9.
Good evening, Bria Whitmire, Development Services. We're going over item 8, which I'm going to bring up the PowerPoint real quick. So if you recognize this case, we tabled this at the last Planning Commission. This is the RV site that the site plan that we presented, the applicant found that this was a different site plan that the engineer had provided us in the case than what they were hoping to do. We have since received that updated site plan, which we'll present here. So just a reminder of the site itself, we do have it surrounded by all sorts of, we have low density residential, medium density residential, we have CR1, CN1, it's a conglomerate of the area. The notices, we have 3 opposed, 1 in favor. This remains the most up to date at this time. The ACUs, if you recall, is the main topic with this site. The previous site plan that was presented at the last meeting had some locations that were within that ACU zone. The updated site plan that we have received since our last meeting has still a few sites within the ACUs, but not those additional ones off on the property line. However, since then, we haven't had enough time to meet with the Navy over the new site plan. So for that reason, the staff is recommending to table to get some more of the feedback from the Navy. I don't know if there's any questions on that.
Okay. Could you read in the letters of opposition, or do they make any statements?
I did not bring those.
Okay.
I do not have that. Are they the hard copies there?
We can look at the agenda for the link, if you can get that from the website.
It's not in, is it in the Y drive? No. It's just only on the C. Okay. Mm-hmm. It is in the show.
So for the link, we have the staff report and then the PowerPoint, and you were asking for the comments from public?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Yeah. I can read them if you'd like.
That'd be great.
So we have, do you want me to mention their names?
Yes, please.
Okay. So we have Michael Kelly at 4002 Laguna Shores Road, Corpus Christi. In opposition, not enough information, looks like something's shifty going on. Why didn't all the property owners affected get this notice? What do they intend to build? It seems like this will lower the property values of the area. And that was, we have another one. Kevin Kirk, Nix, 4009 Summit Drive. In opposition, the reason is the canal access. Cameron Shia, 4001 Laguna Shores Road. In opposition, I need more information with regard to access to Laguna Madre existing channel.
Okay.
And that's the three that I have.
All right, and we previously stated at the last meeting that any access concerns with regards to that channel is outside of our purview, so we don't really have any bearing on that. With that, Commissioners, any questions for Bria on item number 8? Commissioner Lerma?
How much more time are you going to need, Bria?
That I'm unsure of.
Nobody's been able to get contact from the base?
The time that we got the site plan, I don't have the exact dates, I don't want to misstate, but by the time that we got this revised site plan, it wouldn't be enough for the turnaround time for their full review and comment time period. Where I'm not sure of the exact time that they'll get back to us, but we know we don't have it at this moment. I'm positive that we would have it by the next PC cycle.
Okay.
I guess if that answers it, I know that we're within, it's usually like a week to 10 days, so we'd certainly have it by then.
That's fine. Thank you.
Commissioner Bud?
How many pad sites right now are currently existing in the APZ zone?
There has been discussion of that because of the way that the existing site is. If you can see a bit on this aerial, there's the existing item, there's a mix of different size structures and they're not aligned like this, so there's been a debate over that. I do not have that number for you at this time.
I can tell you that park has been kind of variable. That what was previously reviewed by the Navy reflected 26 spots, is that correct?
Sounds right.
I'm getting a nod from
Right.
Mr. Demas over there.
I think y'all met with the Navy, right?
Yes. There's roughly 26 on the first site plan, and it's jumped to 40. There's roughly about 7 that are hugging the line of the flight zone that the Navy's interested. On the updated site plan that I spoke with Mr. Pollock about, the concern is how many are encroaching into the APZ. So I'm awaiting an official letter. I've had a discussion with him this morning, but we are going to officially meet. I think we have it pinned for next Monday. Also, the fire department needs to be involved because, of course, each one of these pathways you see on the screen has to have the 28-foot turn radii, has to be 20 feet wide. The code requires so much spacing. The reason that we're asking for the extra time also is, let's say, for instance, tonight you voted and you said, yes, site plan looks good, you give them an SP, you move forward. And if we find out after the fact you can't meet fire code, well, then they're having to come back and start all over and amend their special permit. So that is the reason why we would prefer that little bit of extra time, make sure all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, and the site plan works for both the Navy and the fire department.
And I don't see the applicant here. Have you discussed this additional tabling with the
We
applicant?
did run it past them. We didn't get much of a response. So I know they're eager to just keep the ball moving forward, but we didn't receive at least opposition to tabling it any further.
Okay. But they didn't tell you, give us an up-down vote now?
No, it's more of what do we need to do to make sure it gets done correctly and everybody's in agreement.
Good. Okay.
I'd like to add if there is a decision made on the case, it ends here, they would reapply as a new applicant. We would have to re-advertise, renotice, and all of that, so it would push it out significantly. That's why we're recommending to table it to keep the notices active.
Okay. Commissioners, any additional questions for staff? All right, with that, I'm going to open up the public hearing on item number 8. If anybody would like to speak on item number 8, please come to the podium. I see none. So with that, I'll close the public comment and entertain a motion.
Mike Munoz, I move to follow staff's recommendation of tabling until next meeting.
Second.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, Mr. York is back. Moving on to item number 9, impact fees.
Good evening, Commissioners. Al Raymond with Development Services. Tonight, we wanted the Chair of SEAC to give this presentation. Like the Chair of SEAC will give the presentation next month to City Council, but he had to be out of town, so you've got me. So it says appropriately there, Capital Improvement Advisory Committee, impact fee recommendations for the City of Corpus Christi. This is a culmination of approximately a 3-year process. It started in March of 2021 when we, City Council, engaged a contract with Pape Dawson Engineers to do primarily 2 things for our city. 1, develop comprehensive master plans for our infrastructure, water, wastewater, stormwater, and roads. And then 2, to provide an impact fee study that we could evaluate, that committee could evaluate, review, and then make recommendations if they choose to move forward. Next slide. Am I controlling it, or? Sorry. Okay. This is the 15-member committee that acted as the steering committee, and in August of 2021, this committee was assembled, and this group has really kind of worked with Pape Dawson, worked with the development community to create what we have before you today. This group consists of the state law requires 40% of the members to be from the development community, and we are almost at 50%, developers, landowners, architects, engineers, builders, that kind of thing. And I have to commend this group because they've worked very hard, met very long hours, and met many times to do several things. And on the next slide here, sorry, I'll get it right. Several things they had to do right in order to get to where we are today is to look at the future land use assumptions and update them, right? They used the city's comprehensive plan. They used the MPO data. We used the 2020 U.S. Census. With that, the 50-member committee also worked with Pape Dawson to develop the comprehensive master plans, how we thought the city would grow, where they thought the city would grow based on experience, based on studies, and ultimately with those master plans, developed the associated capital improvement projects that supported or shored up the master plans. All of that was presented to council in January of this year and approved and adopted, which left just the second half of the contract, which was the impact fee study. Pape Dawson started that in mid-2023. We started meeting with the SEAC committee members in September-ish, and our last meeting was held in April of this year, where the SEAC members, discussed and made recommendations to move forward. And as you see there, and as I said earlier, recommendations, we move forward with recommendations for council consideration in July next month. Ultimately, what SEAC is, and I'm just cutting the chase because many of you were at the workshop, and I thank you for attending that, and Mike Dice has briefed you because one of the things we've learned, or I've learned, is that there was a lot of concern with the master plans that you were kind of drinking from a fire hydrant. So I realized, hey, we're just going to update you as we update SEAC and bring you along so that none of this is really relatively new to you, right? But ultimately, SEAC recommended adopting the maximum rate based on the study for all four infrastructures, but they assessed at a different rate. So they adopted the max rate and assessed at a much lower rate. And ultimately, those assessments turn out to be $1,662 per residential lot, which is somewhat reasonable, right? The SEAC committee members, the 15 committee members voted 13-2 in support of this. The two that did not vote were not voting or didn't vote because they didn't want impact fees. They just felt that this was the $1,600 was way, way too low, right? And they thought that $1,600 is a great starting point, right? It's we incrementally get to where we hope to get to, right? So we crawl, we walk, and ultimately then we run. So this is what was recommended by SEAC, and this is what we're sharing with. This is what we shared with you at the workshop, and what we're sharing with many of you at the community meetings and engagements that we have all over. We have our last one tomorrow night in District 1, I think. So, so this is where we are. I wanted to say. Just to show you kind of, hey, where are we on the scale, right? So we're not really greatly ridiculous here. As you know, some Texas cities are really out of sight, and we're kind of on the left-hand side of that. We're at the lower end of it, right? Because for us, it's just, it's starting, right? I always say it this way. If council should pass the impact fees, it's really just a form of cost sharing, right? We're saying that now when this is passed, that developments that increase demand on the network pay their fair share. That's all. For all intents and purposes, the city will always carry the heavy load of infrastructure, right? But in this case, now, when demand is created, caused by development, the developers pay their rough proportionality share, and it doesn't necessarily balance the scales, but it just says, hey, look, there's participation across the board, which, as you know, or many of you know, we as taxpayers, ratepayers, pay that now 100%, right? So it still may be 75-25 or 80-20 or something like that. It's not like they're going to pay 50% of some massive infrastructure, but it's a start, right? And I think it's a start in the right direction. So with that, here's the remaining schedule, right? The Planning Commission tonight, tomorrow, D1, June 13th, and in July 16th and July 23rd. We roll the dice and see if we can get council to approve. My presentation was really shortened to the point because I thought many of you have seen it before, but I'm here, my staff is here. Ram, raise your hand, Ram. Ram is a SEAC member here in case you have like, why did SEAC do what they've done? And I've got paper too in case there's any questions you may have that we can answer.
Okay, commissioners, questions for staff? Commissioner Mandel.
What would trigger escalations in the rate, and how do rate escalations occur?
Primarily what would trigger that is growth, right? Early on when I said here in the land use assumptions, we looked at the city's comprehensive plan, we looked at the area development plans, we looked at the MPO data, and we looked at the U.S. 2020 census. All of that collectively said, hey, Corpus Christi, you're growing at 1.3%. In theory, as soon as we said, hey, this is our growth rate, and we started in on the master plans, MPO came right behind and says, hey, we're growing at less than 1%. As a matter of fact, we were like at 300,000 and something. I said, no, we're really under 300,000. So it's somewhere around 1%, right? So you see where it says the associated capital improvement projects, collectively, those capital improvement projects associated with the master plans are about $5.3 billion, right? Of that, roughly 40% is eligible for impact fee eligible, right? So if growth does occur, hey, that could possibly pay for with support of impact fees. But the other 60% is just our operation and maintenance. It's our, our deferred aging infrastructure that's all over the place that we have to eventually address, right? So what would change the numbers is if growth happens, right? SEAC is going to meet, assuming it's approved in July, SEAC will meet every 6 months and assess the decisions that they've made to say, hey, is it good? Is it unfolding like we thought? Do we need to make any adjustments? Not just with the master plans, not just the land use assumptions, how about the capital improvement projects to make sure that, and all of that then will feed into, all right, do we need to do rate adjustments, right? Ultimately, if we do grow, right, and we'll say, hey, the $1,600 is not quite cutting it for the infrastructure we got to put in the ground, then that group will make recommendations to raise fees, hopefully, and then that'll go before council, right? And council will have a decision to make as well.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Commissioner Motagi?
So when y'all were doing this study, did you see recently in April the Supreme Court ruling that they voted 9-0 on impact fees being unconstitutional?
Yes, we did.
That interrelation to what we're doing, is it going to open us up to like litigation or?
Buck Bryce, Deputy City Attorney, the Supreme Court did not rule that impact fees were unconstitutional. The ruling in that case was specific to the California impact fees, and they found that impact fees are subject to a proportionality evaluation, so they're not immune from the Nolan-Dolan nexus evaluation.
Well, the way I read it is each project would have to be assessed individually versus doing a blanket.
No, that's not what the Supreme Court said at all. And Texas already does have that Nolan-Dolan nexus built into it. So all developers have the ability to ask for an assessment of any exaction that we make.
Okay.
Okay. Y'all ready for my questions?
I got one more.
Go ahead.
All right. Of the 1662 per lot collected, if it's in a growth area, let's just say London ADP, does that money collected for 300 unit subdivision in the London ADP stay to fund the CIP projects in the London ADP, or does it just go for everything, for maintenance and new growth infrastructure?
Commissioner Mendel, that's an excellent question. And the answer to that question is, it's kind of a twofold answer. When we started the process of master plans, the master plans were broken up into service areas, right? So let's take the wastewater. There's 6 wastewater treatment plants, so there were obviously 6 service areas. There are 2 water treatment areas, even though Owen Stevens is one, but the island has another pressure plane, so there were 2 service areas, the island and the mainland. Stormwater, we had can't really remember them, but I think it was like 6 or 8. And then ultimately the roadways, we had 21 service areas. The only ones so when SEAC and began to analyze after the impact fee study, they decided to do several things. One, they made 1 service area for water, 1 service area for wastewater, and 1 service area for stormwater. That's ETJ and beyond, all the way to, from Cal Island to the island. So to answer your question, if something happens in London, yes, it could be spent there, but it could be spent anywhere in that service area because it's only 1 service area. Unfortunately, we couldn't do that, and I don't know if it's unfortunate, but we didn't do that for roads because state law requires a 6-mile radius of service areas in the road, and since our city is kind of a linear city, that ended up to be 21 service areas. But ultimately, to answer your question, yes, anywhere within a service area, if something is needed in London and the money's collected, yeah, it could be built in London, but it could also be built anywhere that there's need within that service area for that particular infrastructure.
Thank you.
Commissioner York.
Thank you. Couple questions. First one is, and I'm sorry, you may have said this earlier, I was trying to take notes of what I wanted to ask, and I didn't hear the whole thing, but did you talk about what the vote was to approve the SEAC vote?
Yes.
What was the reason
13-2.
for the 2 nays? You said they wanted higher fees?
They thought the $1,600 was too low, yes.
Okay. Was that their only objection?
As far as I know, yes.
And then did they support the max that was adopted, just not the assessment, or?
The answer to that is yes, but go on.
Ram Munoz, 1608 South Brownlee. The answer is yes. They wanted to assess it at $7,000 and some change. So they were good. We went ahead and approved them, but their assessed value, they wanted to go ahead and triple. We had quadruple in some areas. And we felt, going to that number was unrealistic, because right now, if you compare it to the trust fund, which we use as a baseline to make sure that we weren't going too far ahead on cost increase, the answer is yes. They wanted more, and we told them we just couldn't do that right now. It's not fair for the community.
Sounds like you already did the math. What is the trust fund ERU comparable?
About $1,000.
$1,000 a lot, yes.
Okay. The other question I had is, what exactly are we voting on today? And what I mean specifically is what I expected we would see after all of this incremental presentations and so forth is an ordinance. And all I see here are fees. So where's all the, all the policies, all the language about how these fees will be implemented? And
it's because our vote doesn't count, Michael. This is just a recommendation to council that planning commission has seen it, and
I'm asking for a reason, because from what I understand, that hasn't been finished yet with SEAC, and maybe Ram can address that. I don't know if that discussion is still ongoing or if it's just not in our presentation, but is that something that we're going to look at later, or are we adopting this now and then staff just drafts the policies, or how does that work?
First of all, I'd like to respond to Commissioner Miller's. Your vote does matter, so don't listen to any of the nonsense. And what you're voting on is what's up there, right? Which is we brought to you the master plans, and I can't remember. I think you recommended to move forward to council. And this is the second half of that, which is the impact fees that's going to be recommended to move forward to council. To answer your questions about, well, I don't know processes, I don't know procedures, how are we doing this, how are we connecting the dots? SEAC has set up a subcommittee. The chair of SEAC has set up a subcommittee, and they're actively looking at the policies of implementation, right? If this is adopted, and I should have said this at first, if this is adopted in July, as you see, the implementation won't be until October 1 of 2025. All that time is to try to stand up a program, and I shouldn't have used the word try, is to stand up a program that we can support and that works for the city of Corpus Christi. So all of that is in the works, right? So even though you can't see it, it is currently in the works, and will it come back to this body for comment? And absolutely, and it'll be presented by the chair, and you'll have as much, and we'll send it in advance so you can tear it all up, and then can ask questions to the chair and SEAC accordingly.
Okay, so we're just voting on recommending approval of the fees that SEAC voted to approve. The policies and how it's done will come later.
Yes, sir. That's absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Munoz.
I think I heard in a previous presentation that there's some cities, for instance, Pflugerville and New Braunfels, that use impact fees as a way to discourage growth. Did I hear that right, or is that?
You've heard that said many times, and we would always come back and say that's not necessarily accurate. New Braunfels and Pflugerville and these other places have these super high impact visas. It's not to discourage growth. It's to keep up with growth, because they're growing out of sight, unlike we are here. And so this is what's needed to keep pace with it. It's not to deter development. It's not to say don't build in my city. And a lot of times people have said that. I'm not quite sure where they got that from, but yeah, that's just not necessarily an accurate statement.
Okay. Do you see the potential for this to be used as a deterrent to growth in the future? I mean, maybe not with this council, but with future councils?
Whenever there are fee increases or fees added, there's always people on both sides, hey, this is good, I understand what it is. And all of you know that we here, and if impact fees are passed and everyone will celebrate and go dancing into the night, but you really won't see the impact until year 10 or year 15. So it's not going to be us, it'll be our children, and those who still live in this great city. So there is a positive side, but yeah, there'll always be people that say, look, you have fees and we shouldn't do this or whatever. So we just try to bring the facts and let those that vote on it, choose as they will.
And SEAC will always make the recommendation on the.
If there's increases, yes.
Increase.
They'll look, initially they'll do this every 6 months. They'll assess their recommendation and say, hey, how are we doing? And who knows, maybe we'll have a spike in growth, right? I would hope so. And those things will then mean that we have to adjust other things. And the primary other thing is the 1662.
Are the SEAC members changed out?
They are selected by council, so in essence, yes, they are. But what we were successfully able to do, even with the new council, is to say, hey, we were kind of already vested, so why go get new guys when we kept the same guys? We were successful in keeping the same guys.
But the city manager and the council members and all the different appointing individuals, at their discretion, could they pluck somebody?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
On any committee, right? Like on any committee.
Right.
I want to piggyback on that, trying to play devil's advocate, I guess. So is there something in place to stop, council or city manager, whoever, from just, well, hey, we want to raise these fees, so let's pluck off all the developers and put on a bunch of people that love high fees? Is there, does the state law mandate the makeup where it has to be certain percentage developer, certain percentage, this and that? Not that I'm saying that would happen, but just, some people probably think that's what's going to happen. But
state law requires, so the answer to that question is, can people pick and choose and pluck out who they want? Yes, they can. However, the state law requires that 40%, the makeup of the SEAC members, 40% of them have to be from the development community, right? So in theory, and we were very successful in convincing them, hey, we've already invested a lot of time, so you might want to keep the same individuals. Explain to them, and who knows, maybe we'll do the same with the council that's coming in November. But it could be a whole new group of people, but if it is, 40% of them have to be from your world.
Appreciate it. And then last question on that. How many, I didn't realize they weren't all council. I mean, I guess I did, I should pay attention, but does it mandate how many can be appointed by city manager versus council or vice versa? Does it matter?
It doesn't mandate that.
Okay.
And we stopped at 15, it could be 20. It just, the only mandate is the 40% number.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Go back to the slide with the fee recommendations. One thing I'm going to be critical about you on, Al, is you're asking us to vote on something that is solely based on residential development. And I don't see commercial on here at all.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
Can somebody get out a calculator and do a hypothetical on a 30,000 square foot private commercial building, and then also on a 80,000 square foot school?
So let me, hopefully I can answer the question that will save the calculation. For stormwater, SEAC recommended 0.
I know
so
that.
Whether you're coming in as a school or whatever, they felt that the stormwater fee that is paid now is sufficient. For both water and wastewater, it's based on your meter size, right? I only showed the residential numbers here because that's kind of how the clock turns, but it's based on your meter size, right? So, thank you, right? So, for example, thank you very much, sir. 2-inch meter is considered 8 ERUs, or a 3-inch meter is considered 17.5 ERUs. And so that is, and you'll pay, that'll be multiplied times if it's water, $950, or multiplied times the $612 if it's wastewater. So there's your number there's your impact fee for water, and there's your impact fee for wastewater. And also for roads and stormwater, it'll be 0 because there's no, that's how SEAC.
But how does it work? Like if you've got a 6-inch fire line, and you've got a 2-inch domestic line, and you've got a 1-inch irrigation meter, is it times all of those, or?
It's the meters, so it's your.
The fire line's not metered, so
Okay.
it's only
So it's
relative
just based on the meter size?
only relative to what is metered.
Okay. So pick a middle school that's currently being built, the new Southeast Middle School. What would the impact fees be on that project?
I don't know the meter size. Do you?
There's a Ram Munoz. They're exempt.
Oh, schools are exempt. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
So schools-
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Schools and colleges, or, just schools?
Schools.
Under 395, colleges are considered schools, so they would be exempt.
Are there any other exemptions, hospitals or nonprofits, or?
No, it's just schools. That's the only specific exemption within 395.
Okay. And affordable housing? Okay. All right. That takes care of the commercial. I just, impact fees don't just affect homes. And you and I have had the discussion about, the shock and awe that my clients have seen over the years in our building permit fees. And my argument's always been, well, we don't have impact fees. And so you were going to be working on some offset there, and I don't know where we're at on that.
Yeah, my dice is working on that.
So on down, Mike, is that before, we're still paying for those fees, right, through the plating process. We try to keep them to a minimum. That way, they get paid later on, whether you're commercial or residential. But I took, your recommendations that you gave us a while back, and how your project over there on SPID was so costly. So we looked at how we can help out.
Right.
We went ahead and considered the stormwater as a good example to assist large developers, large commercial retail, box stores when they came in on that type of project. So we did consider that.
Okay.
You were heard.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. One of the issues that I've had with this, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about it later about, how we're going to reconcile the trust fund balances and things like that. One of the issues that I've had with the whole process, and I've had some independent conversations with members of the SEAC, and I'd like to remind everybody, all the planning commissioners, that the initial vote that the SEAC took was a 8-7 vote, which was, do we want to pursue impact fees or not, right?
Yes.
So you vote on, okay, is this the path we're going down? Yes or no? That was a pretty close vote. And then it's, okay, now let's start working through the details since it narrowly passed, and, let's, get down the road. And
I just want to make one correction, Mr. Chair, and I think you can correct me wrong, Mr. Dice. That first vote was just to see, are we ready to vote? That 8-7 vote was to ask, are we ready to vote for impact fees? It wasn't that we like it or don't like it. It was just to say, are you guys ready to vote today? Because they were looking to kick it to another meeting, and we said, okay, no, we can.
But it's my understanding in talking to some of the members that I've spoken with that the question came up was, hey, can we look at maybe reforming the trust fund system and increasing trust funds? And the answer to that was no, we're only talking about impact fees per the chapter 385 or whatever. We can only talk about impact fees. So it's
right. So
up, down on impact fees, and then everything else works out.
And that's a great point, because when they asked about that, that wasn't our charge, right? We can certainly do that. And one of the things I always say is that our Plan B, if this is not approved by council in July, is we need to look at, because we got to revamp that process so it's a little more self-sustaining, because it's roughly $2.3 million in the hole. I've got to bring several reimbursement requests to council, so that'll probably push us somewhere a little above $10 million negative, right? So, and it's not self-sustaining, because for those individuals who get that money back, it's like 5-6 years, and who can develop like that? So even if, yes, I like for this to be approved by council, but even if it's not, our plan B is we've got to then do exactly what you're talking about. Okay, what are we going to do with impact? What are we going to do with trust funds? And there has to be a lot of, it's more than just raising fees. It's how it's implemented, how it has worked, how we need to adjust how it works to make it more sustainable.
My concern is right now, there's so much. In general, I don't personally have a problem with impact fees, but in general, there's a negative connotation from the development community regarding impact fees, right? So we're seeing more plats come in, and it's going to continue to come in leading up to, if these votes all go the way that they're going to go, leading up to October of 2025, there's going to be a flood of plats that come in, right? So when in the process currently under trust funds are the lot and acreage fees paid?
So they're currently paid when plats are recorded. So when they come before you and you approve a preliminary plat or a master preliminary plat or whatever, that's just a plat that's approved. And in many respects, it's vested, but it doesn't have to pay lot and acreage fees until it's actually recorded, right? Right. So
that's after construction.
No, that's before they can get a building permit. You got to have a recorded plat. So let's say in July, and let's say council approves impact fees, those that are platting, and because for example, they may buy 300 acres, but they only plat 20 acres at a time, because that's just how we build in this town. They'll still be able to do that and pay lot and acreage fees all the way until September 30th, 2025. Right, they're still, and then on October 1st, 2025, now they're in the impact fee system, assuming that we have it stood up like we want to, right? So, and you make and of course because you're in this business, it's not like people are knocking down our door with plats, and there's not a lot, right? As a matter of fact, our last month was like 5, I think. That's really slow, and then maybe because interest rates are hovering around where they're hovering at, but are people still platting? Yes, they are. Are they recording plats? Not really, because when they record plats now, it costs money. So it's approved by you, and they'll say, hey, give me an extension, and they're not recording. They're just waiting for a better time to build, right? What the impact fee does, and I think that's what Ram was trying to say, is that right now those fees are paid by the land developer, the guy who's putting all the horizontal work in and preparing it for someone to go in and go vertical. In the impact fee world, those fees will be paid at the building permit, which is a different individual. It's not the land developer, it's really the builder or the guy going up with the vertical, whether it's commercial or residential. So that's a change in how the process works as well. But to your point of platting, whether it passes or not, and hopefully it does in July, but everyone, as long as they plat before September 30th of 2025, they'll still pay lot and acreage fees, and those lot and acreage fees will still go to pay off the debt, whatever it may be, at $3 million or $10 million or whatever.
Okay, here's a scenario so that I understand.
Can I ask a clarifying question real quick? That you said if they plat before, what if there's a 500-acre subdivision and the preliminary plat was approved before, but they're on unit 10 of 20? Does the whole subdivision get to stay under lot and acreage fees,
No,
or is it based on final plat when they're vested?
Final plat, and that's why I don't want to say, I rather just say record it, because when you say approve the final, is it recorded or not? When it's recorded, that means you've already paid your lot and acreage fees, and I'm not going to double dip you, right?
But then you also mentioned the acreage, lot and acreage fees are plat based, but the impact fees will be building permits. So will the impact fees not ever be paid on a plat?
Well, in theory, they can't, because we don't know the ERUs at that time. In theory, right? If you have an apartment complex or you have a
well, let's say single family to keep it simple. What I'm wondering is, like, say a final plat is platted, approved, vested, whatever, before the deadline, but home builder buys a lot in that 50-lot subdivision and doesn't pull his permit for 10 months. Is he paying impact fees or Or how does that work?
Is the plat, if he pulled a permit, the plat's recorded, so he's not. He's already paid lot and acres fees.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
So you were saying one of the things you hate, or
Well, I'm just trying to figure out how we, first of all, pay off the $11 million balance, right, on the trust funds, and how do we, put a moratorium on trust fund requests to keep it from going even further negative in the hole, prior to the transition to impact fees. I've asked the question of the Pape Dawson folks, how many cities have gone from trust fund to impact fees, and the best answer I can get is none. And that might be a reason why. So I have concerns personally about the answer. The most common answer that I get back is, we'll figure that out between July and October.
Well, well, let me just, we are working on that now. We're working with the executive team and members of SEAC. We're working on that now. And just like with the policies and implementation procedures, we'll bring back how we're going to transition from trust funds to impact fees, should we need to transition from trust funds to impact fees. So I know that you sent an email after the workshop, very detailed and thorough, as you usually do, and you mentioned this then, right? But you have to know we were already thinking about this, because we're at that point. Do we just continue to allow this debt to get crazy and allow developers to wait years to get paid? Because the whole thing is about development, right? So even if you get a bank to carry you for 2 or 3 years, how many people can do that, right? And pay that interim interest or whatever. So we're looking at that. We're working with the executive team to effort that, right? And like with the policies and implementation procedures that we'll forward to you, kind of to chop up before you actually sit and meet with you meet with the chair and have those discussions. We'll do the same thing with how we think, the city of Corpus Christi decides how do we transition from trust funds to impact fees. You're right. We're unique in this, right? It's not like every other city does it. So, and it's also not like it can't be done. We just have to figure out how to do it so it benefits everyone. We don't want to stop growth. And in that year period, right? And because on October 1, 2025, it's not like there's going to be $1 billion waiting to spend, right? That bucket, too, has to build up funds. So the city still has to develop, and that's why a lot of the CIPs will just be on our annual operating department CIP list, right? This is what we're going to do in FY 25, 26, FY 26, 27, and, it's just, it still has to build up. So it's not a magic wand, right? But it's a process, I think, that takes us in the direction we need to go.
Yeah, I just see continuing time extensions coming in anticipation of this. And I understand that October 25 is going to be here sooner rather than later. But I want to make sure that there's a plan in place. That's why I have reservations about going to council with a recommendation for approval on this, because we still don't have a plan.
Understood.
And it's my understanding that if council approves this in July, the vote that's being put before them in July, that there's no turning back.
Well, with one caveat, what SEAC recommended, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that they recommend moving forward these fees, but no implementation until there is until the policies and the implementation policies have been stood up, right? So that means that also is approved by council. So we have work to do to make sure that we bring, because our hope is to bring them at the same time next month. But things happen, but we're working toward that end. Yes, Buck, did you?
Oh, just to address your comment of no turning back, it'll be adopted by ordinance, and all ordinance can be amended, repealed, modified. There's nothing, it doesn't bind the future councils to not changing it in the future.
That was the answer that was given to me by, forgive me, I forget her name, from Pape Dawson.
Kara?
Kara, yeah.
So Michael,
Council can always change their mind.
Okay.
as part of our recommendation to, city council and to you guys is we put a line in there, right, that said if the policies are in place by October 25th, that they have to push this on, whether it's another year or so on, until they're all intact. Well, we know what changes, how it changes, all the, map adjustments, master plan changes, all the policies have to be in place before it goes forward.
Okay.
So we put that caveat on there.
All right. Any other questions for staff? Commissioner York.
I want to ask a question about how, I understand the policies are still going to be worked on, but I'm assuming you've looked at how this works in other cities. So with the questions about how impact fees will work compared to trust funds. So right now, the reason trust funds were started was because a developer, let's say he's a mile outside of town and needs a mile water line to get to him, but that's not his water line. He says, well, I need a water line. And the city said, cool, we don't have any money. You can wait till we build it if ever. And they went, no. So they used trust fund money to build that water line. But the way they did that is they paid to design it, to build it, and then they got reimbursed. So if that scenario happened under impact fees, say a developer's a mile outside of town, needs a mile water line, does that developer apply, did they pay to, design it, construct it, and part of their project, or do they have to say, hey, city, I need a mile of water line, will you please do a capital improvement project and build it? And then, how does that work?
Mr. York, Commissioner York, that's a great question, and Mike Dice, help me out. Go on. Sure, please.
So Jake Powell, Pape Dawson. One of the policies that the city is currently working on is how specifically to handle that. What we typically see is that during platting, it is usually when it's vetted out, even for a large commercial project, during platting, the amount, the meter size, the number of lots, whatever the case is, to determine the impact is assessed. And you as the developer may need an 8-inch line, but the master plan calls for a 12-inch line. And so in that process, the developer and the city, Corpus Christi Water in this case, not to speak for them, come to an agreement on how that's handled. Sometimes the situation is that if the city has money and the developer has their money, they go in together, they figure out a way to joint bid it, and they split the costs. There are situations where it's a very short extension, where the decision is made, just extend your 8-inch line. There are cases where the agreement is made that the developer does overbuild, and then the developer gets credits. But usually there's some sort of joint agreement worked out to where there's some sort of cost sharing up front. So there are varying situations. But the city would not be in a position to force the developer to build anything more than their development needs.
Who approves those agreements?
It would be so the development, so that policy is still being worked out.
It is, and I wanted to say one other thing. The difference is now, should impact fees be approved, is that each year the developers will not, because you said, hey, he's going to build a line a mile out of town. Well, in theory, hopefully that line is on the master plan. Hopefully it's in the CIP, right? So it's nothing new, and now that line on the CIP, the city is going to ultimately build it, and so the developers need to meet and annually to say, hey, this is what we're going to do in FY20 whatever, and is that project in here, right? The city has approximately 2 years to design it, 5 years, and 3 more years to construct it. In theory, we don't move that fast, as you know. So as he's saying, the development agreement party entered and said, okay, Mr. Developer, you can build it faster, and he'll be credited his impact fees, and we'll reimburse the line for him to do it, right? So, or in some cases, developers say, yeah, I need that in 2 years from now, so it'll be right in line with what the city does. But now there has to be that engagement with that group, and well, development services will be the center of it, because we will then engage Public Works for roads or stormwater, and we'll engage CCW for wastewater and water.
Is that?
But in theory,
thank you.
Hopefully, well, and I know you said, hey, it's a line a mile out there, but hopefully that line is on the master plans that we just finished, and it's in the CIP.
Understood. No, that answered my question. When you're talking about looking at 2-year outlook on what we should build now to kind of get ready for what's going to be built. Is that a staff discussion and decision, or is that something that SEAC is involved in as well?
No, it's something that CX's involvement sort of ended with the adoption of the CIP. Now how the rubber meets the road is between the developer's discussion with the operating department. Hey, I want to do this in 2025 or 2026. And so, because, we have a finite amount of resources, so we can't do everything. So some things got to go and some things will be in there, right? But that's how then we will have to engage each year so that, one, it's either in the CIP, or two, we've already worked out an agreement with you, the developer, that says, hey, we're going to do a development agreement to build this line, this road, this whatever.
Commissioner, if I may also add, the CIP also is a living document. So as the years go on, it'll be evaluated to say, hey, does this project make sense? Do we need to take it off? Do we need to add a project based on how the city's growing and shrinking?
And additionally to that, RAM will be around for a while, because beyond keeping them up to date every 6 months on where things may be going, part of that update is what monies are collected, how the monies are spent. That's required to be done at least twice a year per 395. In some cities, it's done quarterly, monthly, so that can be adjusted as well. So they'll be engaged with the whole process, how the monies are collected and spent.
Okay, thank you. The last question I have is more procedural. What I was hearing is that we're being asked to vote on recommending approval of the fees, but that SEAC already kind of has a condition in place that this is conditional upon the approval of the policies that haven't. So if we put that in our motion as a conditional approval, do y'all have any heartburn with that?
Not at all.
Okay.
One thing I'm going to point out, Al, is whenever we've got our very first pitch for impact fees, your biggest argument for impact fees is, look, we got to quit politicizing the trust fund, because we have somebody that comes and asks for reimbursement, and they're friends with certain council members, and they get favoritism or get accused of favoritism.
Did I say that?
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Sorry.
Yeah, and the argument was the trust funds are going to take all of the politics
impact fees
out of it. Right, the impact fees are going to take all the politics out of it. But what I'm understanding now, with developer agreements for certain projects and things like that, with council approval, the politics are still going to play. Correct?
Well, the council's already approved the master plans, and the developer's just getting a development agreement to build a line in the master plan on the CIP. So it's not like the lines that we bring now forward with reimbursement agreements are not there. So, and someone has to amend the master plan to put it there, right? So this is, unless someone builds off the grid, off the beaten path, right? Hopefully it's what's already been approved and adopted. And there's always, and forgive me, hopefully I was very cordial what I said, but there's always politics in everything we do, as you know, right? But in theory, you pass impact fees, you pay your 2,050 cents, and you're off to the races, right? Without having to, do what we do now with trust funds.
And most important, again, this is a state-regulated process.
Correct.
This is not anything that is local, yokel. Do I know this or that? This is the same rules in every town under 395 in the state.
I get it. The order of the votes, though, the backwards order of the votes is not a state requirement, from my understanding.
Not necessarily. Again, It depends upon each and every project. If a developer agreement is brought to
No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about council's being asked to vote in July on moving forward with impact fees, and then the policies will follow between then and October of 25. You don't have to follow that order per chapter. Is it 385 or 285?
395, right.
395. You don't have to follow that order. You could put all the policies in place and then have a final vote once everybody is comfortable with everything that's been done thus far, you can have a final vote, and then they go into effect
You
at that time.
You could.
So that would be my preference, because just like the SEAC's first vote, are we gonna chase the squirrel or not? Up, down, and that was a very close vote, 8-7. Okay, so now we've agreed that we're going to chase the squirrel. Now we've got to define what that squirrel looks like, right? And so it feels like shoehorning, and I want to lose that feeling in my heart.
Anything I can do, just let me know.
I kind of agree.
I need a hug, Al. I need a hug.
What is the significance of doing it in this order versus just developing the policies and coming back in a year for the whole? Like, what's the significance of just recommending approval, or we recommend of adopting the fees at this time without policies?
So back to the chair's question or comment about the votes, right? There's a couple people in there who wanted more time to review the information. They wanted another 2 weeks to go ahead and go back and double check numbers to make sure that what you see up there was, acceptable. So we had to give everybody the opportunity that if they're ready to vote or if they're not ready to vote. So we didn't want to rush the whole group in there. I mean, they've been there for 3 years, and their whole point was to this culmination of their second time recommending something. So we wanted the whole group to feel comfortable, and it was marginal, right? But at the end of the day, the group voted unanimously as a group together, 13-2. Well, we thought it was a good idea to go ahead and keep the rate similar to where it's at, little increase to go ahead and pick up stormwater. But that vote was not because we were unsure. It's just some people needed some more time to absorb the information. That's where that number got cut off. Yeah. Not that we're not unsure about our vote. It's just they needed more time overall.
Yeah, and it's not about unsurety. It's just, it's not the typical way things happen. It's like me asking my kid, do you want, chicken for dinner? And she assumes it's chicken nuggets. And then she goes, yes. And then I tell her, okay, we're going to have shredded chicken tacos, which are a big thumbs down in my house. I like processes that, okay, where do we need to go and how are we going to get there? And then we start with the roadmap and we, lead up to the final decision, as opposed to, are we going to do this? Yes. Okay, and then here's how we're going to do it.
Well, I mean, look at it this way. Let's say we're going to take it like a project. There's a project study, there's drawings and bid, and you start construction. Well, why would we start construction before starting our project planning and our bidding? So consider our CIP drawings, our planning. Our bid would be the actual getting this approved. And let's do our construction drawings. Let's finish out the policies to get it in place. We can't do everything all at once. At that point, you're pushing everything all at one time. And can you imagine you guys getting everything at once, all the policies, the master plans, and the vote? I mean, at this point, everybody...
It's already happened 4 times.
Well, I mean, imagine taking that all at one time. And even at this point, with breaking it up in little segments, little pieces, we're still getting a lot of pushback, even from our own committee members. Like, it's a lot of information. We need more time. So we gave them all the time. I feel like the way it's spread out was an opportunity for everybody to take it in increments to get to the finish line. And I don't see how we could have done master plans, the voting, and the policies all at once. You would have to be waiting years for all that to be put together. So that's just my opinion of the overall planning on that.
I just wish I'd have been on the SEAC, but that's neither here nor there.
I understand, I want to see if I can get an answer to that question. So I understand bringing the master plans up separate, because that's a precursor to even going into the impact fees. But what's the significance, or is there a necessity for approving the fees contingent on the policies? Like, what's the reason we're not waiting for the policies?
Well, Pape Dawson was contracted, as I said earlier, to do 2 things. 1, the comprehensive master plans, and 2, the impact fee study. That is exactly how we're bringing it to council, right? And I have included Planning Commission in the process of the public hearing, right? Even though it's not required by state law, because you guys play a role in how the city is developed as well. the whole latency period between when it's adopted and when it's implemented, even in 395, is to do this very thing. Okay, how do we think we're going to implement it? In our case, we have to do something that other cities don't have to do, which is to get rid of or transition or sunset a process we already have. So it's not going to happen instantaneously. It's going to require some effort, and we're efforting that. Our plan now is, when we go to council next month, is to take with council the ordinance and the implementation policy. So, and even if that's in draft form, so that council, because a lot of council members are thinking like you, like, well, we don't know how to dot our I's and cross our T's. What's going on here, right? So we are working and efforting that with the subcommittee to bring that forward as well. So at least if they're looking at it in a draft form, they know, I see, we do this, we do that, and this is how it moves forward, right? So that whole latency period from July until implementation is to help stand up this program, right? So like Ram was saying, it's not instantaneous. It was almost impossible to do with the things that we've done in the last 3 years, right? It is how the process works. And many cities do the same thing, right? They adopt the impact fees, their master plans, and then they have a team set aside to work on the policies of implementation. And right now you mentioned, and one of you mentioned, hey, how do other cities do it? We're looking at Fort Worth right now, and we're looking at San Antonio. So,
and as an example, the city of Lubbock passed theirs, and they've already had 2 amendments to their process because of things that they see how they work. So it's that living type of work.
Well, I'm going to put it, Vice Chair. So why would we pay to get the policies developed if we don't make it past step 2? If at that point you're going to make me pay for the whole project if I don't get to phase 3. I mean, you look at it as a project, why would I want to pay money for that? That's how I look at it.
I see your point. Is Pape Dawson's job here done at this phase, or are they involved in the next phase of helping develop the policies as well?
They have a role in helping develop the policies as well, yes.
Okay. Just curious.
And everybody's looking at Fort Worth and San Antonio, but we still don't have a representative community that went from trust funds to impact fees, which...
as I understand, there weren't communities that actually used the trust funds.
Right. But it's you can see where there's difficulty, and you were doing it one way where, let's say somebody's a mile out, they're going to pony up all the cash, and they're going to get paid back whenever development fills in behind them, theoretically, right? He's got $2 million tied up in a water line, and all of a sudden impact fees come in, and you can't use proceeds collected from impact fees to pay off balances in trust funds. And so where does that gap funding come from? If somebody could just give me a straight answer of an idea of where that gap funding is going to come from, I can support this.
And here's the thing I think you have, which I think what you're saying, and I've just heard it in what you're saying, the trust funds that the trust fund amount, negative or otherwise, that have been committed and that probably will be committed by council, those individuals are not left holding the bag. Ultimately, they will be funded, whether we wait 7 years to fund with the trust funds or the city finds funding to fund those projects. So the developers who have come to council and council say, yea, verily, we'll give you that reimbursement agreement, they're not going to be left holding the bag. So because development still has to happen in this city, right? So the transition that we have from trust funds to impact fees, we have to understand that. And you said it several times. It's unique. We're unique because cities don't have trust funds. So we have to figure out how to make this work, not just in the period when, and hopefully if council approves impact fees, but how do we make it work in that 15 months while we're waiting to transition to this new process. But and I hope you don't think, and I hope you know, no one is just left holding the bag that says, oh, the council's approved a $1 million, $2 million reimbursement agreement, but now they're going to renege and you're on your own, Mr. Developer. That's not the case.
I'm not worried about that. I know that the developers in this town will figure out a way to collect their money, but where's the money going to come from? Is it general fund? Is it certificate of obligation bonds? Where are we paying for this?
So this is Neiman Young, Assistant City Manager, and Al's absolutely correct. The executive team is having discussions on how the trust fund is going to be made whole. Definitely understand that that's a concern of the commission, but do note that it is a concern with the executive city team and eventually with city council as well. We have different pots and colors of money that we've been weighing options on to serve as the conduit to make the trust fund whole. And we're at approximately 80% solution. And we anticipate being at 100% solution next month, and we will be prepared to have a public discussion about that then. But I can assure you that there's a lot of discussions and planning going on that implementation of the impact fees, but also at the same time making sure that the trust fund is made whole.
Okay.
Close down.
Well, while we're on that, that's good to hear. Maybe this came up earlier, I don't remember, but have y'all looked at the legality of using impact fees collected to pay for trust fund obligations?
Can't do it.
Even though you can't argue it's growth related, and
Sure.
Bucks looked really, really hard at that.
And trust me, that would be a great and easy solution, but legal said that we can't. And again, that was a conversation that we was made aware of approximately 90 days ago. So we've been having discussions about, how we're going to make the trust fund whole for at least the last 90 days. And again, we're at an 80% solution. It's just something that we haven't had discussions with the policymakers yet. Don't want to get ahead of them, and we anticipate having those public discussions next month.
Okay, but you're asking me to vote on something today.
Well, it's just like how Ram stated, we don't want to get so far ahead of, place the cart so far ahead of the horse that we're putting too much time and too much resources into something that's going to end up being disapproved. So we decided that it was more prudent to bring the impact fees to the Planning Commission with the hope that we'd gain you all's recommendation for City Council approve, get City Council to approve the impact fees, and then we'll take the bulk of our resources, time, energy, and money into finishing the implementations of the policies and the implementation plan for transitioning out of trust fund with a whole trust fund.
Okay.
I'm going to ask a dumb question. What is the significant difference between impact fees versus trust funds that will cause the impact fee balance not to do what the trust funds have and be $11 million in the hole 10 years from now? Is it the city participation, the 40, whatever it is, the 50% rule, or, I know these work in other cities and hopefully they're not all in the negative. I'm just curious, what's the big difference?
So remember what I talked about earlier? We used the trust fund as our baseline. We adjusted it up proportionally where we think it should be, where you take the trust fund, it'd be in a black position right now instead of a red. And if we come back in 3 months, 6 months later on, and we're reviewing the data, and if we need to make an adjustment to the actual impact fee cost that we have right now to make it where we keep continuing in the black operation, we'll make that adjustment. But right now, we started as trust fund as a baseline. We went ahead and saw what it would take to keep it in a operational black state, and that's how we came about that number.
So is it fair to say that it's not a procedural difference, it's just the fact that basically you're saying the trust fund, just the fee wasn't high enough to support it?
Well, I mean, the answer is look at it right now, right? We're in a deficit. Could the trust fund have been adjusted? I don't know. That wasn't our task. Our task was to help out and assist Pape Austin and the city to figure out a system that we can push forward and that we can monetarily adjust it to make sure that we're operating in the right operations where the account's in a black, we're paying all the impact fees, they're coming in, and whatever capital improvements that we're having to do, or if we're having to work with a contractor, and that portion gets all covered. So that's what we're trying to do. We don't want to be here 10 years down the road and trying to implement another system. Well, I mean, we'll be here every 6 months to look at the data to make sure it's moving forward.
Okay.
And I just want to add one thing to the point of what Rand was saying is that right now, when we come before council, trust funds, as I said, are projects that the operating department doesn't know. We amend the master plan so that it's in there and it's something new. Now, impact fees are all on the CIPs that were approved in January. So you say, well, what's the primary difference? Is that what we're implementing is what's already in the CIP, right? So whether we do it this fiscal year or the next fiscal year, or we pull out in a development agreement with you, it's already in the CIP. So there is no how can I say, and he said, being in the red, being in the black, what you're implementing has already been funded through the CIP, right? So I'm either going to reimburse you because I have the money for it, or I'm going to build it myself.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, any other questions for staff? All right, with that, I will go ahead and open up the public hearing on item number 9. Would anybody like to speak on item number 9? I see none. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
I'll move, but I want to make sure I word it correctly. Commissioner York, you mentioned including a statement that said that we're approving based on policy being implemented in the future. Yeah, go for it.
All right, I'm going to try this. I'll make a motion that we recommend conditional approval of the impact fees presented, with the condition being that the policies and/or ordinances for the impact fees be approved by, I guess, Planning Commission and Council prior to implementation. Does that work? Would you like to edit?
I just don't see what it does. I mean, the policies themselves, I mean, conditional approval is fine, but I mean,
we do with plats all the time.
It's not going to negate a vote that we take today if we disagree with a policy later on down the road.
I second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Can we go ahead and get a roll call vote on this one, Ms. Ruth?
Yes, sir. Want me to start with you?
Sure.
Okay. Chairman Miller?
No.
Vice Chairman York?
Yes.
Commissioner Mandel?
Yes.
Commissioner Salazar-Garza? Commissioner Munoz?
Yes.
Commissioner Matagi?
Yes.
Commissioner Lerma?
No.
Commissioner Hendricks absent. Commissioner Budd?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Moving on to the director's report.
That was a pretty good meeting, nothing to report.
All right, if there's no other business, this meeting is adjourned.
Sorry I texted you during that. My item, I wasn't trying to be, I was trying to break any rules. I was texting you as I was leaving because I forgot to tell you before. I was like,